Hello and welcome to another episode of Blue Alpine TV. In today's episode, we will talk about what billionaire Peter Thiel thinks about Bitcoin, and we'll talk about the profitability of Bitcoin mining and how it's dropping. First off, let's jump right into this main news story. PayPal's Peter Thiel longing Bitcoin is hedge against world falling apart. So billionaire investor Peter Thiel has given an interview and a speech at the Economic Club of New York, and it's about an hour long. It's quite an interesting interview, and we'll link it in the show notes or in the description if you're watching it on YouTube. But he's essentially saying that he is long Bitcoin but short on other things. So he's mainly saying that he's very or quite bullish on Bitcoin becoming maybe not a currency, but kind of a alternative to gold. So he's saying it could potentially become digital gold, and the statement is exactly, it's like bars of gold in a vault that never move, and it's a sort of hedge of sorts against the whole world falling apart. Now, generally, when very, very rich people talk about these kind of things, they have, if you're very, very rich, you have problems on a very different level. And security and safety is actually one of the biggest issues that a lot of very wealthy people have. And they're always plotting and thinking about how they could secure and their loved ones against any kind of scandals and tragedies and catastrophes and all of these things. For example, Peter Thiel, I think he bought land in New Zealand or in Australia as kind of if in the US something would happen, he could kind of get away with like a helicopter landing place and all of these things. But this is not a part of the story. The part of the story is that Peter Thiel is an extremely intelligent and extremely successful investor. He has been he was one of the co-founders of PayPal. Actually, he created and invested very early in Facebook. He has invested in SpaceX, in Airbnb, and all of these very, very successful companies. And he's quite a contrarian when it comes to opinions like these. So it's always interesting to hear a different opinion versus just Bitcoin will go to 100,000 or it will go to zero, etc., etc. So he's saying I would be long Bitcoin and neutral to skeptical of just about everything else at this point, with a few possible exceptions. There will be one online equivalent to gold, and the one you'd bet on would be the biggest. And he's kind of saying that Bitcoin has the perfect or close to the perfect characteristics of becoming this type of gold. And I think he even said some stuff, some statements about Ethereum as well. He's also a bit I don't know how much he has invested actually, but there are rumors that he has invested around 20 million into Bitcoin, and that was when Bitcoin was quite high. So it could be that he's also invested in other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum. Him coming from a very technology background, I think it's quite possible that he is also invested in Ethereum. However, I'm not sure whether he's the kind of guy or the kind of investor who would invest into 100 altcoins as well. So he's very strategic about his investments, and I think as an investor you have to be like that as well. Both your time and your money are restricted, so you have to think about the best opportunities that are at play here. We always say invest into the fundamentals and not the price action, so don't think necessarily about the price action or about all these kinds of things if you're looking to invest long term with a diversified portfolio, etc., etc. So if you're also thinking like Peter Thiel, you would probably bet big on Bitcoin and big on Ethereum to go and maybe even replace gold. Like I said, we will probably link this in the show notes or in the description, so you can watch the entire interview. It's quite interesting. And that's that. Then next up, we have Fundstrat's Tom Lee reports Bitcoin mining now less profitable due to falling BTC prices. In the article, there is a mention that the Fundstrat, which is a research company, and Tom Lee is quite an interesting figure also on Twitter. I would suggest following him as well. He's saying that the model Fundstrat used for calculating the cost of mining one Bitcoin includes the cost of equipment, overhead such as sustaining, cooling apparatuses, and the cost of electricity assumed to be 6 cents per kilowatt. So as you know, in order to mine Bitcoin, you need very efficient hardware, you need a lot of hardware, and you need coolers, you need the space to do it, you need cheap electricity, and all of these things combined add up to a certain amount of cost. Now, as long as Bitcoin is increasing in price and your hardware price is staying the same, you're actually making a lot of good money, a lot of profit. But if the Bitcoin price is dropping or even staying as is, and you're keeping on investing into the mining operation, you're actually breaking even or even losing money if worse comes to worse. So assuming that the Bitcoin price is dropping and you're keeping on investing, you will potentially lose money on a Bitcoin mining operation. And this is basically the model that they have created is saying. The thing is, as a Bitcoin miner, you don't only get money by mining the block and actually mining actual Bitcoins, but you're also getting money from the transaction fees. Now, the transaction fees have also been falling. One reason is SegWit. Another reason in the future could, for example, be a Lightning Network and all of these things. So it won't be as profitable to mine Bitcoin as it used to be previously. One interesting part that the article is mentioning, however, is that potentially, even if the price of Bitcoin will drop significantly, that the Chinese Bitcoin miners, which there are a lot of because it's quite centralized in China, will probably keep mining even if Bitcoin sinks to a price where they would lose money, noting that they have the extra incentive to send their earnings overseas to have money apart from the Chinese government's capital controls. As you know, in China, money flows are very controlled in general. And if you're a Bitcoin miner, you're earning the money that you're earning is in Bitcoin. So you can technically send it wherever you want. You just need an address and then it will work. And this is a huge incentive for Chinese Bitcoin miners currently as well. So even if they are losing money, it's very well possible that they will just continue mining entirely. I wanted to say something else regarding the transaction fees here. As we've talked about yesterday, the Lightning Network has launched in beta onto mainnet, so transaction fees will be dropping as well. And I mean, from an investor perspective, which is what we're always looking at, from a long-term investor who looks at the fundamentals of these things, obviously if the price of Bitcoin is dropping, the incentive for Bitcoin mining operations will drop as well. Now, if we exclude the Chinese Bitcoin miners and think about the other miners, if there are less miners, then the whole network will have a problem. And as you know, cryptocurrencies or general blockchain technology relies heavily on network effects. So if the network is kind of dropping down or is becoming more and more centralized, the whole idea of having a decentralized network that is working 24/7 without central control is kind of at danger. So keep this in mind when you're investing into Bitcoin. I mean, also connecting to Peter Thiel's point. So obviously there are a lot of smart people who have thought this through, but still there is this risk that if the price keeps dropping and if people decide more and more that Bitcoin was just a fad, it made that jump to 20,000 and now it's dropping back again to $100, for example. If people keep believing this, the mining operations will drop down as well, and then the network could potentially collapse, for a lack of better words. So keep this in mind when investing into Bitcoin. So there's always these two ways of how your Bitcoin investment could go. It could go to 100,000, a million, whatever the price could be in the future of Bitcoin, but it could also go to 100, to 50, to 0. So keep this always in mind when you're doing investments. Don't invest more than you could potentially lose. And if you're setting everything onto one card, make sure that you're doing good research, that you're reading our research papers and all of these things. And with that, guys, I want to end today's episode. I want to leave you with that perspective of thinking how and where Bitcoin could go. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.